Welcome to the Chine Colle demo for printmaking, University of Regina, in this foul year of our Lord, COVID 2020. Chine Colle is a technique for pressing a thin sheet of typically Asian paper, we often call it washi, onto a heavier backing sheet and then printing it at the same time. You need a few extra things when you're doing Chine Colle. You need a soft brush. You need this beautiful little tube of Yamato sticking paste, sometimes called nori paste. It's a rice-based paste. And you need a small tray filled halfway with cool water. Now, for the sake of seeing the entire process, I'm going to start by inking the plate. So I've got a can of Vine Black here and a palette knife. I'm going to take my ink out. Because I'm doing a demo, I don't need a lot of ink out, just enough to take a couple of impressions. So I put it onto the glass and I move it back and forth to warm it up. If there's any bits or blobs in the ink, I'm going to remove them as best I can. And if the ink is in really rough shape, I can use a small piece of tarlatan to sift it out. So using a rubber spatula, you've all done this before, you're going to take a bit of that ink and begin pressing it onto your copper plate. You're trying to put ink on, but you're not trying to put on too much ink. You're almost applying it and removing it at the same time, leaving a thin layer of ink so that the surface of the plate is covered, of course, but those lines where your aqua tint are being filled with ink. I've got a piece of tarlatan here. This is not the cleanest looking piece of tarlatan, but it's actually dry and in pretty good shape. So I find the best possible spot on it and I wrap it up into a little ball. I try to keep the ends tucked in so they don't drag across the plate. And I begin working, in this case, in the middle of my plate, and I'm kind of pushing down and I'm twisting and I'm pulling out. Everyone has a slightly different approach to how this is going to work. And I'm trying to remove the ink, well, as best I can without removing too much. Again, you've all done this before, so you know that there's a balance and every plate is going to require something a little bit different. So after going around the plate once or twice, I'll open up my tarlatan, I'll find a slightly cleaner spot, I'll make another little ball again, and begin pressing. And as I move on in this process, more and more ink will come off and the plate will begin to reveal itself. Here's, of course, where you have to decide when to stop. So I'm going to go around the plate a couple more times until I feel like it is time to stop. It's getting close. If you're more comfortable leaving your plate on the glass, you can definitely do that as well. If you want to hold it against your body wearing an apron, you can do that. You notice I've got gloves on. It keeps the ink out of my fingers. I'm going to find one more clean spot or cleaner spot anyways on this piece of tarlatan. And actually now I'm pressing very, very lightly and I'm just kind of zipping over the surface. I'm trying to kind of just do a last pass here. What I'm about to do next is I'm going to pick up a clean red rag, or cleanish red rag anyways, that hangs above the hot plate and doubling it up and then pressing my finger in from behind. I like to run around the edge of the plate gently but assertively, at least 2 times per side on all 4 sides. After that, I will take a small piece of phone book, clean piece of phone book page, and removing, in my case, my right hand because I'm my right-handed glove, because I'm right-handed, I'm going to flex my palm and press down lightly. What I'm trying to do here is not actually remove any ink from below the surface. I'm just trying to even out the surface tone or the plate tone on the plate. I can use the tips of my fingers if I want, but I find I'm able to get more even and light pressure with the palm of my hand. So after doing that, I'm going to go back to my red rag. This is a preference of mine, but it really ensures nice clean edges. And I'm going to go around the plate just one more time on all 4 sides. And the plate is then ready to print. If you're printing this plate and you're not doing Chine Colle, place that plate onto the press and get your paper and go from there. But Chine Colle adds another little step. So here is where that Yamato paste and that brush and that water is going to come into play. So I place a small amount of the Yamato paste onto the glass. I've made sure the glass was really, really clean. And I'm going to take my brush, I'm going to dip it into the water just to kind of loosen it up, soften it up slightly, and then I'm pressing it against the edge of the tray just to remove a little excess. And then now I'm trying to warm up the paste, but I'm also thinning it slightly with the water. I don't need gobs and gobs of this. And in fact, if I'm doing all sorts of Chine Colle prints, I can add a little bit of the glue every few impressions. I don't have to have as much as possible. Here's the magic part. I'm going to take my inked plate, I'm going to put it into the tray of water. There are a couple of ways to do this. You could hold the plate from underneath and then place the washi paper, in this case this thin washi paper, on top, or you could drop the plate in as I did, place the washi, and then lift the plate up from underneath it. Now the plate is inked, and people always freak out, but this ink is not water soluble. It's not going to run. And you can see that as I lifted it out of the water bath, my washi shifted, and that's okay. I can put it back in the water, I can shift it, and I can adjust it slightly because that water really is allowing the paper to sit on top of the plate. And here's where I take my brush and really gently begin brushing on some of that paste. You're going to see I'm going side to side here. I'm going to then switch orientations and go top to bottom. You can do it any way you like. My preference is to go over the plate at least 3 or 4 times. I don't want huge gobs of the paste on the plate, but what you'll see as I lift this up here and it begins to reflect, you'll see that I have some slight brush marks, which tells me that there is something beyond just water on this piece of paper and on this plate. And now I'm ready to go over to the press. So the press is set up, whatever press you're using, it's set up to print and etching. I've got a template there, and I'm going to place my plate onto the press. And if I'm at all crooked, I could use the edge of my knife. I've pulled the sharp part in, so I'm not going to scratch my plate. And that saves me putting my fingers on top of the plate. So this is basically ready to print. The next step, like any etching, is to go get my paper out of the water bath. I'm using a small water bath here because it's just me and I don't necessarily have to fill up that whole thing. And I've taken my paper out and I've let it drip. It's been in there for at least 30 minutes, at least. Now it's on a towel, and I'm going to lay the towel on top and I'm going to blot the paper. When I pull the towel back, I want to be sure that the paper is not shiny. It shouldn't be soaking wet, but it should have soaked long enough that it is fully saturated. So now the paper goes over to the press, and I'm going to place it on top of the inked plate with the washi paper like any other etching. The big difference here is that if I lay it down and it's out of position, I want to be very, very careful about repositioning it. In fact, I would really prefer to hover that paper gently and carefully over top and then place it down once, because the washi can sometimes stick to the paper before it's been printed, and then you have a real mess. One other little thing is to place a piece of newsprint over top of the paper before putting the blankets down, because what's going to happen is extra glue, that extra Yamato sticking paste, is going to force its way through the paper and then through the blankets, and it can actually damage the expensive printing felts. Nothing different about pressure here, same pressure. And you print it through. There's my piece of newsprint. I usually don't use these twice, but they really do save the blankets. So very gently I'm going to lift up my print. I don't want to be quick about it because I want to make sure that if anything is at all not wanting to stick, that it stays stuck to the paper. And there is my finished product.